Hi everyone, welcome to the first panel session of SC by SC FinTech Conference 2020. Today is day 3 and the final day. The topic for this session is VR, AR, and gamification in finance. My name is Suraya and I will be the moderator for this session. Joining me today are four speakers. Mr. Mark from Thought Machine, Pedro from Flourish Savings, Chris from Artificial Solutions, and Dan from Groove Jones. In case you missed it, you can watch all their streams earlier today and watch all their 10-minute demos. It should be available in the SC by SC platform after this. So, some housekeeping announcement. We do have a mechanism to collect questions from the audience. You can go to slido.com, that is slido.com, and key in the event code SC2020, and then submit any questions that you may have. I'm checking the Q&A box right now, and I already see some questions being submitted, so good. Feel free to upvote any questions that you want the panelists to address. So I would, without further ado, let's continue on with the panel session. We have prepared some questions to get the ball rolling. So we want to ask first general questions to the speakers. This topic obviously is a very cool topic. It's a very cool industry. And also many of us, we grew up with sci-fi movies, and we kind of know how technologies can branch into our lives. And gamification, AR, AI, all of those are cool, but what would be an example of taking the technologies a bit too far, perhaps? Is there an industry standard of a line that shouldn't be crossed? So this is something that I want to ask each of the panelists. Maybe we can start with Mark. Mark, over to you.
Yeah, I think in terms of a line being crossed, I think the most important thing that I've always felt with these sorts of technologies is making sure that it's useful still. And on my particular area, gamification is making sure it is useful. For me, creating 10 levels for users to play and save was motivating and inspiring people to want to save that would otherwise not do so. So that's my key kind of point for your question, is just making sure it's useful. I think going too far is when you're doing something which isn't actually helping anybody.
Thank you, Mark. Pedro, do you want to key in?
Yeah, I think in the age that we live in, we have so much knowledge about behavioral science and what motivate humans and what we know within consumer tech where it can drive people. And I think that power is not understood by a lot of people. We'll look back 10 years from now and be like, we were doing this. And I think it's the application and the usage. So if you think specifically of financial service is, are you bringing people back because you truly want them to build a habit and you want to build a business model that makes sense? Or are you building a trap that you're simply bringing people back to your digital properties and you're trying to shove more loans to someone that may not need? So I think the application in which you use becomes really important. And the models that we had in the offline world needs to evolve as we evolve the business model. And those are hard questions to think about. But if you're thinking about, you're designing the application in a way that is actually benefiting the end user to achieve their goals and aspirations, and the bank can drive the revenue, the higher lifetime value that they want to.
Thank you so much. I noticed inside your presentation, you talked a lot about behavioral research and how you inputted that, even working with researchers. I thought that part was really cool. Chris, over to you.
Sorry, I disconnected, my internet disconnected just as you asked the question. Which question?
No worries.
I'm sorry about that.
No worries. It is, the question is about the technologies that you're using inside your companies, your platforms. What is the line that shouldn't be crossed? What is an example of taking it too far?
Well, I think just to repeat what was said earlier on, is where it ceases to add any real value. And that's been endemic across a lot of what we call virtual assistants and chatbots, where the idea of having to do something that's in an automated way using language understanding or voice, etc., which actually takes longer than doing it by hand. So typically mobile apps for the digital banks have developed to a point where they're super quick. With only a few keystrokes, you can transfer money, you can do an awful lot of things. Now, to do that inside a chatbot where you're typing to do it is just so much more extensive to do that. It might take you 10 times the key presses to do what it used to take you in the app itself. And so in that instance, it's like going too far from technology's point of view. And so you do have to think about where you're applying it and whether it's going to actually add some value from the customer. There are ways of supplanting a mobile application and using conversational AI to achieve benefits, but doing it that way just isn't that way.
Thank you, Chris. I'm reminded, I recently watched the movie Her. I'm sure that's a movie that's brought up a lot maybe in your industry. And I really like viewing your demo when you as a customer would request from financial institutions and things are just really quick and fast and easy. That was really, really cool. Dan, over to you. I think Dan maybe have not joined us yet, but that's okay. Let's continue on to the next question that I have in my list. We want to know more about the technology, obviously. So with technologies, they are always growing and it's very, very fast. What is something that is not, what is a feature that you are dying to include inside your platforms, but maybe it is not yet cost effective or not yet technologically possible with the processing speed right now, with the what is available right now. So what is a feature that you just want to include but just not yet? What is the future? I will go by rotation again. Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, so I honestly really think I've got like 8 projects or so in flight at the moment, and there's nothing that I would say we can't do technically. But what I would say is that I've found and got frustrated over the last 5-6 years how banking technology is holding us back. So legacy bank tech is I mean, I can't easily do micro payments for mortgages on some banking tech. I can't put in savings rules so that I can even have 20 different nestling characters. So honestly, I think that is the part that's holding it back. The second part that I think holds us back, really pushing the banking sector forward, it is regulation. So I really want to be able to show the world true personalization of products, so like truly personalized loans. 1 million customers, 1 million different configured loans for when they want to do payment holidays, when they want to do daily payments versus that, is a regulatory, side that's holding it back. So it's more those sides. And then I would say, from my experience, it's scaling innovation, scaling these technologies within banks is what's really, really hard. Inventing them and talking about them and showing demos is hard, but what gets really hard is scaling.
Thank you so much. Petro, go ahead.
Yeah, I share a lot of what Mark has said. So I believe it's not necessarily specifically with financial service, right? Like there are cool stuff that we want to work on, like you visualizing yourself in the future, thinking about your goals. There's lots of cool stuff that we want to do. But what it's really frustrating me in terms of like industry, I share the regulatory pieces. We've been exploring some things around group financial behavior. And getting people to think and be committed not only at the level of visibility, but accountability to your family, to your peers, to others, to your young kid, because you don't do finances isolated in the offline world. You do with people, with friends, you hold things together, you save together, you have goals and aspirations together. However, regulation often holds us back in terms of what can be done today. And we have even been really creative of like working on top of legacy stack and doing something really exciting in the front end. But the pieces around how can we get multiple people to share finances? And I'm not talking about simplicity things of like sharing money or just save together, but can you do more things with your family members and share and visualize goals to get to what Mark was saying of like, we have the technology power to be really specific of someone's wants and needs and the ability to adapt to that. However, regulation does not always allow us to do that.
In case the audience wants to know, ask more questions about regulations, we do have a session later today about meeting the regulators. So perhaps you might want to ask them what they can help in this sense. Chris, over to you, same question.
I guess there's a couple of comments I want to make here. One is say something we're missing, but something that we continually strive towards is trying to democratize the ability to apply technology like ours. We strive a lot to create user interfaces that allow more business-related people to develop and deliver virtual assistants and some of the solutions that I've shown today. And we think we're pretty good at it, but we can always be better. So it's definitely a route forward that I think most technology companies would say the same. But the continuing development of UI to democratize the availability of configuration and rollout of such clever technology like you saw for the Widiba virtual bank branch. So I guess that's the first thing. The other thing, which is quite evident, and I spoke about in my presentation, is that a lot of the world has a dim view of what a chatbot or a virtual assistant can really do. Gartner have a lovely graph they call where they map out where technology is, and chatbots they feel are right in the trough of disillusionment, as in they're not really delivering on the promise that they said. And so everybody's expectation is low. And so when we start to show that there's some truly exciting stuff you can do, like talk to a virtual assistant inside a bank that makes it inside a virtual branch, it makes it actually worthwhile. It would be unusable without the virtual teller in there, and invaluable, to be honest, not delivering value. So it's really what we also want is everybody to start pushing us a little harder, really, rather than us having to drag people into. So, well, listen, these are the things you really wanted to do once, now you can do them.
Thank you so much, Chris. We have a very popular question that I must address at the moment, and the question is surrounding data privacy, and I'm guessing this is a question that you might get a lot. So question is, what mechanisms do you have in place to prevent data leakage, for example, from bank accounts and etc.? And maybe I would like to maybe ask this question to Mark first, because I do know that you have successfully gotten the ISO 27001 certification. It's a globally recognized standard for information security practice. Tell us why you decided to get that certification and the process of how it's like in getting that certification.
Yeah, I mean, so Thought Machine, the company I work at, produces core banking software. I mean, there's 400 now in the company, just finished a Series C round. What's important about this is obviously we go through all of the steps that a core banking provider, would go through in order to, to get to that ability, so that we can provide Lloyds Bank and Atom Bank, etc., with core banking services. ISO 27001, it's a big standard to achieve. It covers a large spectrum of information security requirements, not just from what you'd expect, but it goes through from the recruitment process to core engineering. There's a big preparation stage. You have to, a lot of policies and procedures you have to make clearer, more thorough. There's an awful lot that you need to do, and have many internal audits with different teams to make sure the quality doesn't stop on paper, but teams, take ownership for the information security. A few external audits that have to be done, so it's not simple to achieve. But Thought Machine has been going now for 6 years, and in order to to get to the status that we've got, going live with core banking, with Mox Bank, Standard Chartered, Atom Bank, and going live, with more upcoming this year and next year. of course, we've got to meet those standards. So yeah, I hope that helps answer your question around that side.
It does. Pedro, as a fellow person working in gamified savings, are there additional measures that you're taking to ensure data privacy? Would you like to chip in?
Yeah, I think security and compliance is top of mind, especially as we work with banks. So we have launched in the US and have integrated with thousands of banks to first test the concept, and then we have integrated with both credit unions and banks in Latin America. So each market has slightly different regulations that they look at after, but they're really looking at three things, right? They're looking at what are you consuming from the bank? How are you keeping that secured? And are you not, can someone penetrate that data, right? So at that level, a lot of our mechanics are PII compliant. So personal identifiable information is encrypted when we receive that information. If we can, we will not consume identifiable information at all. So we can run our mechanics simply with the data, but not using names, keys, bank accounts, and being able to have consume that anonymous and passing back to the institution. And of course, we use state-of-the-art cloud architecture. We host everything on the cloud, on the AWS cloud, and use top-of-the-line standards for security. And our platform is both audited by the bank that we integrated with, as well as third parties. We do not have ISO yet. It is a cost perspective that we have not necessarily incurred, but we have integrated with a handful of banks in Latin America and hundreds of banks through third-party APIs in the US, and have never had an issue with compliance. I think a lot of this is also understanding what is being consumed and what we're using. And none of the platform, we perform transactions. So it's also peace of mind for the bank that we have read access only, and we only read what's needed to run the mechanics for the end user.
Thank you so much. We have, I would like to ask the same question to Chris about data privacy, but additionally, I also want to use this opportunity to ask one of the questions from the Slido. Data privacy, and also, does financial advice by chatbots, will it attract the same standard of advisory capacity and liabilities as a human financial advisor? That's a very good question. Would you like to respond to that?
That's a good question. Actually, that's what I was going to talk about, majoritively, actually. Yeah, data compliance and security compliance is super important. We are GDPR compliant. We have to be GDPR compliant because as a data processor where we're hosting applications for customers, it's critical to be able to do that. I have to say most of our banking customers choose to have the software on premise, which is an option for us. We do have lots of customers who hold it in the cloud as well, so it is an option. But more so, that exact question that person's answered is, well, hold on, if we're going to use a virtual assistant to be providing information to banking customers, surely there's a compliance issue. And exactly there is. And indeed, we have, I'll give you an example of that one of our banking customers, TIAA, in the US, they specifically, they use our technology inside their firewall. So as a customer, you can get access to it. You do all sorts of things with it, from discussing mortgages, investments, etc. And they have two separate types of requirement. One is soft requirements, which always have to be right, and then hard requirements, which can never be wrong. As in, it doesn't matter how a customer asks a particular question, then the same response has to come back. And that's really, really important. And that's where most chatbot frameworks have failed in the past, because the simple concept of machine learning is it's going to give a best fit. I think it might be this is a 70% fit, and it could be saying the wrong thing. And when we're talking about financial advice or compliance, that's very specifically wrong. And therefore, when we have the same issues when we talk about medical companies too, and healthcare companies. We have to give the right answer back. And that's why artificial solutions is different, because we don't just use machine learning. We actually use linguistic understanding, which is actually what we as humans do. We read sentences, we understand what the words in the sentence, we understand where they're positioned, we understand when negations are used, we understand alternative words. So we understand when somebody says something that actually it may be they mean something, they can mean something specifically different. And by applying that hybrid technology to language understanding, we get a high degree of understanding and a very precise understanding of what somebody's saying. Therefore, we can deliver against the soft and hard requirements TIA need when they're talking to their customers. So we say the right thing at the right time in the same way to everybody, so they get the right answer. And that's empirically proven.
Thank you so much. We have a lot of questions about your views on Sharia/Islamic take on these technologies, on gamification, on VR, on AR, on AI. But maybe I can tweak those questions a little bit into and turn it into a localization question. So Chris, I saw that in your presentation, there was a part, I believe it was talking in Spanish. I might be wrong. I'm not sure.
Italian.
Italian. There you go. That was far off, but I can see that maybe you have experience in turning it into another language, for example. But perhaps other panelists, you might want to chime in how you have localized your platforms to tweak different regions, to tweak different languages, especially for Malaysians who we are multilingual here. So maybe you want to chime in. I would like to invite Mark first. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so the localization side of things, just talking, if I just talk in general about gamification and actually I'll go specific into Nestlings. Nestlings as a framework has been set up so that you have many, many different characters that are triggered by different events. So you can have 20 or so characters currently triggered by different events, and the game worlds themselves are little islands that are made. Now, when it comes to different geographical regions, all of that is up for design. So you might have a nestling that is triggered for a very different reason, in the United States versus the UK versus Singapore, etc. And so that's the beauty of that system, just from an actual game world side of things. They're made separately for the different geography. So, for example, we were talking with a bank in Asia, and completely different on how nestlings would be triggered versus they are in the UK. There's that side. So I hope that helps. To answer a little bit on the localization side for that.
Thank you, Mark. Pedro, how does behavioral research, how can that, have you used it to tweak to different regions?
I think there's a couple of things, and I'll try to be briefly, but there are two ways to see it. One is localizing at the language level. What is culture? What types of prizes, rewards, incentives do you want for that culture? And then the technology remains the same that runs the machine, right? And then there's that piece of it. But then there's the other piece, like we were born in the US and we worked a lot with like minority communities within the US. And there were places that we were running to, we were working with Uber and Lyft drivers that came from different cultures. A lot of it, what we call first generation financial citizens into the US that they were new to the system. And we ran into challenges with our savings product that was like, look, I love the product, I love the motivation, but my religion does not allow me to receive interest. So then we started working through some of those elements. What does it mean to motivate someone to achieve their goals, but did not over communicate the idea of earning interest and other things? So that level of understanding becomes really important as a vendor and a partner to the bank. So we look at understanding, we're working with a bank in Bolivia now, and they are very, very strong in the lending side and they want to capture deposits. So really getting beyond localization is understanding the pipings of the institution, what they have and don't have, and we sit on top and easily integrate with that. So then it becomes just simply working with the marketing team to what can you change in terms of language of the product. At the end of the day, the behavioral science behind it is still the same. Like people are motivated, they want to be rewarded, people want to be recognized, they understand that a chance to win is more intriguing than a guaranteed win. So those things ended up being the same, as just adjusting to the last mile delivery of either language, norms, types of prizes that will derive. So.
Thank you, Pedro. I want to switch back to the earlier question and direct this to Chris, because I have a question about legal dispute with using chatbot. So the question is very simple. Has there been any legal dispute involving chatbots yet? Is that a yes or a no?
I'm sure there has, but I honestly don't know that it's at all. I think the one thing that, of course, you need to do to avoid legal disputes, first of all, is every little bit of conversational data needs to be held, and we provide that. So we hold every bit of conversational data that goes on, mostly for analytics against voice of customer, because it's really how the customer's talking to you. But what's probably more important, certainly for the legal point of view, is well, how do you find it? How do you search through to find out whether things have gone wrong or not, and preempt issues like this? And we use sort of advanced tools that are used for language understanding to access unstructured language data as well, so we can get access to that information really quickly and in an accurate way, so we can make judgments. I'm sure there has, and I'm sure people have been caught out. You've seen those chatbot fails. Well, I'm sure it said silly things to people. The Microsoft Lewis experiment, where it trained itself, ended up telling people to F off. You know, that's because it did it. So I'm sure there's examples of that. I couldn't tell you one off the top of my head. We haven't had any.
No worries. Thank you so much, Chris, for that answer. I think that's all the time that we have. We have 3 minutes left. I just want to use the remainder of our time to thank each of our speakers for sharing their thoughts, answering the questions. Thank you, Mark, Pedro, and Chris for joining us today. Please, for the audience here today, please stay tuned for the next session. It will start at 11 a.m. Evolving Financial Services, Accelerating Industry Digitization. It will start in 13 minutes, so please go on with that. All of the speakers today have, earlier today they had, they presented 10-minute demos on their platforms. So if you missed that, please take some time to watch their presentations. Feel free to connect with them, use the features inside Trello, set up sessions, do some networking with them, with each other, contact them to find out more information about what services they can offer. I have been looking at the exhibitors booth, and I see some interest from banks with the solutions provided. So I hope we will be able to see some of these technologies incorporated in the local financial scene here in Malaysia. So that's really cool. And again, thanks to the audience for your amazing questions. Thank you, speakers. We will conclude this right now. Please do share any thoughts on the SC by SC, and share it online, share it on Twitter, and we will see you again next time. Thank you, speakers.